Alright, in lesson 3 on absolute value, we're going to take a look at absolute value equations. One of the things that I like to do is always like to tie solving equations to the graphs of the functions. So here we've got an equation, and they ask us to solve the absolute value of 6 minus x is equal to 2, graphically and algebraically. To solve this graphically, we're going to graph two separate functions. We're going to graph y equals the absolute value of 6 minus x, and we're going to graph y equals 2. Alright, the absolute value of 6 minus x. Alright, it's associated with y equals 6 minus x, which has a slope of -1 and a y-intercept of 6. Alright, so there I'm on my y-intercept. Got a slope of -1 going on here. I'm 1 over and 1 down. Oh, and it's about to go below the axis there, so it reflects back up. So there we go. We have the graph of y is equal to the absolute value of 6 minus x. Right? So there we go. Y equals the absolute value of 6 minus x. Right? Y equals 2 is simply a horizontal line that crosses the y-axis at 2. There we got y equals 2, and here we got y is equal to the absolute value of 6 minus x. And you can see those two graphs cross in two spots. Right? The first spot they cross at is x equals 4. That's one of the solutions to our equation. The second spot they cross is at x equals 8. Alright, that's our second solution. Right, generally speaking, we're going to have multiple solutions to absolute value equations. Now, one of the reasons this is we need to remember that the absolute value of 6 minus x is really a short way of writing two graphs. Over here, we've got 6 minus x. Or sorry, over here we've got 6 minus x. Over here we've got negative 6 minus x. Alright, so here we go. I'm now going to take you through the steps to solve it algebraically. So, algebraically. The absolute value signs are by himself. This really defines two equations. One of them is 6 minus x equals 2. The other equation is 6 minus x has to be equal to -2. Alright, the first equation, we get 4 minus x is equal to 0, or 4 is equal to x. And that gave us our first solution. The second equation, we got 8 minus x equals 0, or 8 is equal to x. Now, graphically can be a lot of work, and it can be much quicker and easier to solve absolute value equations algebraically. And it's really straightforward as long as you remember that once you have your absolute value isolated, right, you have to create two equations and then solve each of them separately. Alright, let's take a look where this happens in applications. For example, it says a computerized process controls the amount of fish that is packaged in a specific sized can. The computer program sets the ideal mass at 170 grams, but allows a tolerance of plus or minus 6 grams. Solve an absolute value equation for the maximum and minimum mass m of fish in this size of can. All right. So, anytime you've got this plus or minus, that's a good sign that you need to use absolute value. All right, the equation we're going to set up, all right, it tells us to let m be the mass of the fish. All right, and if we take our mass of fish and subtract 160 from it, if we take our mass of the fish and subtract 170 from it, we should get somewhere between positive 6 and negative 6. Or in fact, we should get that the absolute value of the mass subtract 170 should be equal to just 6. So for example, 175 is okay because 175 minus 170 gives you 5, and the absolute value of 5 is equal to is less than 6. All right, the maximum value, you can see one of them by inspection, is going to be 176, right? 176 minus 170 would give you 6. The other answer we can also see by inspection is 164. 164 minus 170 is negative 6, and the absolute value of negative 6 is equal to 6. But I'm going to take you through the algebraic steps. Our absolute value signs are by itself, so we can write our two equations. M minus 170 is equal to 6, or m minus 170 is equal to negative 6. Right? This first equation gives us a mass of 176, and the second equation gives us a mass of 164. Right? So the maximum mass is 176 grams, the minimum mass is 164 grams. So to summarize, to solve absolute value equations, you need to isolate the term that has the absolute value symbol in it, and then write two or possibly more equations to solve.